A man given a week to live had a shocking last request. If you were given a week to live, what would your final request be? Would you choose to travel around the world? Or perhaps settle old grudges with long-lost friends? Well, when Texas man Richard Ewers found himself staring death in the face, he was forced to decide how he'd make the most of his final moments on Earth. And when Ewers finally announced his remarkable last wish, the local community was shocked into taking drastic action. The 71-year-old Ewers was living around South Bexar County, Texas. But while Ewers had clearly made an impression on his community, it wasn't always a positive one. After all, despite an ailing body, he kept himself busy with more than a few furry friends. See, sometime before his 70th birthday, Ewers discovered an alarming sight. Someone had abandoned several dogs on his property. There was seemingly no note or explanation of any sort. No doubt concerned and confused, Ewers then did the unthinkable for a man in his position. He adopted them, as much as you can adopt homeless dogs. The trouble was, Ewers was hardly a professional dog carer and only had limited means. So he fed and cared for all the dogs, but soon he got a rather large surprise, and it was one he'd still be thinking about on his deathbed. According to Inside Edition, some of the pooches dropped on his doorstep eventually started to have puppies. Whether the dogs were pregnant when they were dumped or became pregnant under Ewers' care is unclear. But whatever the case, Ewers discovered the number of dogs in his house was about to skyrocket, and he would face a tough decision. Specifically, once all the new puppies were born, Ewers was left caring for around 40 dogs. It obviously requires a lot of energy to look after so many dogs, but that evidently didn't put Ewers off. Still, some issues proved to be too much. For instance, a fire once broke out at a property in front of Ewers' home. The flames consumed one man and his 3 dogs before firefighters could get the better of it. And the fire very nearly reached Ewers' house, with him and his 36 pooches inside. That's not all, the dogs themselves caused some trouble too. After all, 40 energetic dogs are always going to be more than a match for one 70-year-old man, and it probably didn't help that Ewers didn't even have a fence around his property to keep the dogs from roaming. That's why the neighbors began to complain, getting the old man a handful of citations. Eventually, he admitted he had to do something about the pooches. Ewers knew he couldn't afford to pay the citations, so he resorted to desperate measures. First off, 13 dogs were rehoused by local rescue societies. And the remaining 27 pooches? Well, he simply kept those inside his house with him. And the news kept getting worse. Ewers' health was in bad shape. Ewers had stomach cancer. The diagnosis was terminal, although doctors didn't tell him exactly how much he had at first. But one thing was clear, he wouldn't be able to look after 27 dogs on his own for much longer. Luckily for him, there was at least one person in his community who stepped in. Mary Euler of Save Our Strays San Antonio knew they needed to get the remaining 27 dogs out of Ewers' house as soon as possible. But first things first, she oversaw volunteers putting a fence around Ewers' yard. And then after that, Euler pledged that her nonprofit would treat, spay, and neuter the dogs. That still wasn't enough, though. Yet it did get the attention of a local news station. In March 2018, KSAT first reported on Ewers' situation and Euler's desperate bid to help him. Then Euler helped set up a Facebook page with a goal to find homes for the remaining 27 pooches. And because of the page and the news report, people finally started tuning in to make a difference. The owner of a local funeral service covered the cost of the maintenance work, for instance, but that alone wasn't going to cut it. Time is of the essence, Euler told KSAT in 2018, and there was only one solution. We can't do this without fosters. I can't stress that enough, said Euler. Best of all, people started to ask about how they could adopt Ewers' dogs. And even though there wasn't going to be any quick ways for pet lovers to take home the pooches, there was still plenty of interest. So for a while, things were looking up. Until Ewers got some more tragic news. In April 2019, Ewers' cancer progressed to such a stage that he was removed from his home and put into a hospice. And finally, doctors revealed that he then only had about a week left to live. But it seemed that the 71-year-old didn't become angry or upset. Instead, he revealed to Euler that he had only one final wish. Yes, all Ewers wanted to know on his deathbed was that the remaining dogs still living in his house would find homes. But Euler knew the situation was grim. "We were all very saddened by this, of course," she told KSAT in 2019. "We want to make that last wish come true for him." The trouble was that the dogs weren't ready for new homes. "There's a lot of work involved," Euler said. "All they've ever known is Mr. Ewers, so it's going to require a family that has a lot of patience." But letting the dogs stay where they were wasn't an option either. "There's no one to give them attention and love," Euler explained. "There's no running water. There's no electricity. The conditions are just not ideal. And time also wasn't on their side. If these dogs didn't find new homes soon, they'd end up getting seized by the county. This move would only further disrupt the emotional state of the dogs too. It would add a lot more stress to what they're going through already," said Euler. "Not having Mr. Richard there's confusion, there's loneliness, there's depression." Fortunately, Euler had no intention of giving up. "We promised Mr. Richard that we would rescue all his dogs, and as a rescue volunteer, we follow through," Euler said in 2021. That's right, Euler continued to work on fulfilling Ewers' final wish for 2.5 years. All but one of the dogs were taken in by Hearts United for Animals in Auburn, Nebraska in 2019. And that final pooch? He was rescued in September 2021. So Ewers' surprising gesture inspired a community to come together for a good cause. "You've got to love animals to do this type of stuff," said Euler in 2019. Ewers clearly cared for the dogs and loved them. Yet Ewers is not the only one who showed us that it's never too late to make a difference. Please share this with your friends and family.